Let's go to Albert Breer's at the Combine. I'm sure he has big, strong opinions on our duos. Okay, so this week we heard the comment about Bryce Young. Sean Payton had come on my show and said, hey, listen, top 15 picks, you don't go undersized. It doesn't matter what the position. This was always my knock on Baker Mayfield. He's a franchise quarterback. You can't draft him one. That's not what – Jamarcus Russell was a bust. I got drafting him one. Size, arm. So you look at Bryce Young. He's 5'10 and a half, 192. What do you do? What are you hearing with that size at quarterback?
Here's what I'm hearing, that if Bryce Young were 6'3" and 220 pounds, we'd be talking about him like he was Joe Burrow or Andrew Luck. And that's, I think, that's the issue here for the teams that are drafting towards the top, teams that might look to trade up like Carolina and Indianapolis, is you're looking at a prospect who's got very advanced football knowledge, who's got great feel and instinct in the pocket, who's a competitor, who's produced at a high level in one of the best programs, and probably the best program in college football. And so he checks every single box, intangibles, all of it. And the size isn't there. And so that makes this very, very difficult. I think the best comp I've heard out there, and one that I've heard from teams over and over again, is Drew Brees. But there are very few quarterbacks who are under 6'1" that don't run 4.4, 4.5 that make it. And so that naturally leads you to Brees being the one that would actually match who Bryce Young is. You're obviously going down a very narrow path if you're trying to make a comp to Drew Brees. So it'll be interesting to see what Bryce Young becomes at the next level. And I think, the big question here is going to be how he holds up, because it's not just his height, it's also his frame. And he got hurt at the end at Alabama as well.
So I went on a rant yesterday on Will Levis. Grandpa went to Cornell, mom went to Yale. Big brain power. Huge arm. Brain power, arm, good. Now, I used two other Southern comps, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, that went to non-traditional Southern powers where they're basically surrounded by non-NFL players facing NFL players. And Will Levis stacks up winning, completion percentage, TD interception with Eli and Phillip Rivers. Now, there's a lot of people that say he kind of lacks pocket awareness and he kind of runs into stuff. Very possible I'm not a scout. But I also know I sent two executives this weekend some thoughts on Will Levis, and they both liked him. What are you hearing on him? It just feels like to me, of all the prospects, he's getting beat up a little bit. And I'm like, go look at Eli's numbers at Ole Miss. Go look at Phillip Rivers' numbers. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Well, there are a couple things here. Number one, why couldn't he beat out Sean Clifford at Penn State? And Sean Clifford is a good player.
Yeah.
But I think that question's definitely lingered for him, and one that he's going to have to continue to answer over the next couple of months. The second thing is that he does have all of these tools, and you do love him as a kid. And the arm, the size, the competitiveness, all that stuff's there. Why wasn't the production better?
Yeah.
And a lot of teams are looking at this and they're saying, well, they had Liam Cohen in 2021 and he had a dynamite year. And then he lost Liam Cohen and he took a step back.
Yeah.
So was he a product of Liam Cohen bringing in Sean McVay's system and making things a little easier? And then he loses a few players around him and he loses the offensive coach he was working with. And now it doesn't look the same. If you're drafting a guy in the top 10, Colin, that guy, you envision that guy growing into somebody who can fix problems for you. And so we've seen flashes from Liam Cohen when things are really right around him. The question is, can he do it consistently enough? And does he have the feel in the pocket, the instincts, all that stuff I talked about with Bryce Young? Can he develop those at the next level? Generally, those are really hard things to develop at the pro level. And so you have to have a lot of confidence in your coaches that they'll be able to get that done.
So when you're at the Combine, a lot of coaching staffs won't go. It's always been a great opportunity for GMs and coaches to mingle and talk. And it's almost like they say business deals are done on a golf course. Business deals are done in Indianapolis at that Steak Shake snack place around the corner. I've heard legendary stories about where guys are up all night long having milkshakes and eating burgers.
Oh, I got bad news, though.
What?
I got bad news.
What?
It's now closed at midnight.
What a bummer.
It was 24 hours before. Yeah. It's now closed at midnight. I mean, what the hell?
No more great deals done at 3 a.m. But the Derek Carr thing is interesting. J-Mac brought this up before. So he was overlooked at Fresno State. Raiders bail on him. And now there's rumors about Derek everywhere. Is this just his agent showing him love? I still think Carolina fits. What are you hearing on Derek Carr? There's a rumor every day on him.
So there's mutual interest between he and the Jets. And I think that the Jets are the team that's sort of taken this the furthest. Now, there's been an understanding on both sides there where Derek Carr wants to look around, and the Jets want to wait for more clarity on what's happening with Aaron Rodgers. And they also want to survey the landscape, Ryan Tannehill, Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, all the options that are out there. And so, I think if you had to handicap this, you'd say Derek Carr is probably the second option for the Jets at this point. Like, if they feel like the Rodgers thing isn't going to work out, then they turn to Derek Carr and maybe that gets done. And I think it's interesting because you look across the landscape here with all of these guys, right? I think for the first time in forever, Colin, there are more experienced starting quarterbacks out there on the market than there are available spots to start. So if you think about that, right, like if the supply outweighs the demand, is the market going to drop out somewhere? And are there going to be deals to be had there? Because I think there are teams that are going to look at this and they're going to say, well, yeah, I like Daniel Jones, or I like Jimmy Garoppolo, or I like Derek Carr. The problem is, I have to pay $30 or $35 million for him. Give me Baker Mayfield for $10 million instead.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's so interesting about this market is that, you look at the makeup of it, and there are so many guys who have starting experience that are going to be out there. And I just don't think there are the number of starting jobs out there for all of those guys to find homes where they're going to be able to make the money they want to make.
I said this. Chicago has no history of getting offense right. The last great skill player they drafted was, I think, 2012, Alshon Jeffrey. Their first offensive draft pick last year, third-round receiver from Tennessee. It's not working. And so I believe their defensive culture, and they have a defensive coach, they're best served to trade down, get multiple picks. They've already got 2 fives. They already gave away another 2. But if you could get a couple seconds, a couple thirds, you go down to Houston. Then you go down to Indy. And load up on offensive players, try to hit in a couple. I think that feels like what I would do. Get me as many picks as I can so I can reduce the chances of literally coming out of a draft without a top skill player. What are you hearing on Chicago?
Well, you said it, Colin. They flat out need players, they need volume, and they need guys across the board on the lines of scrimmage. They need more receivers. They've got some help in the defensive backfield last year. They could probably use even a little bit more. There's not a spot on that roster where you look and say they couldn't add another player. And so they absolutely need numbers here. And because of the makeup of this year's class, like that cliff comes pretty early, right? Like when there's that real drop off and teams are starting to get into, second round grades, we're talking about that happening in the teens. And, when you get down to like 11 or 12 this year, there may not be a big difference between that pick and the 40th pick. So I think what you're going to see here from Chicago is we probably want to stay inside the top 10 with at least one pick. But because maybe there isn't a huge difference between one of the Clemson guys and a Will Anderson or a Jalen Carter or, the Iowa guy, whoever it is there at 9, if you trade down with Carolina, well, now you can accumulate a lot more picks. So I'm with you. They could either trade down multiple times and put themselves in a position where they have a lot of picks off multiple trades, or they could choose, instead of trading down to 2 or 4 with Houston or Indianapolis, just trade all the way down to 9 initially, and then maybe you pick up more picks because you went further down. So I do think that this is a volume draft for the Bears where they want to get as many picks as they possibly can. Obviously, they already gave up one of their picks for Chase Claypool. So I think accumulating capital now is going to be a key when it comes to trading away the number one pick.
He's all this stuff. He's got great stuff on the quarterbacks. He's at the combine. He's the lead content guy for Monday Morning Quarterback. Read his stuff. Next 4 or 5 columns are going to be so good. I've come to terms with this draft that Bryce Young is the most gifted quarterback. Richardson at Florida is the most intriguing. And then Will Levis and C.J. Stroud are good, but not good enough to overcome nonsense. They'll be as good as where they land. And that's kind of where I fall. So
that's fair.
Yeah, that's what it feels like to me. So read his stuff. We'll have him on again from the Combine next week for more updates. Albert, it's great seeing you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.